Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them and how you can build it yourself.
This episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast is brought to you by our sales coaching and consulting services. Are you looking to create repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue? We've helped thousands of companies grow their business with tailored expert advice backed by testing to ensure they establish the best practices that'll work for them. Head over to bit.ly/predictable revenue coaching to learn more. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast. We're going to be talking about the headwinds that one faces because of the economy and how that's going to impact B2B selling. So that's something that I think we all have in our minds. We've seen some kind of early indications that we might be heading into a bit of a downturn. Luckily, some people have been in those downturns before and have been able to work out some frameworks for how to actually sell better and actually use that market downturn to a seller's advantage. So that's what we're going to dive into today. I'm your host, Sarah Hicks, and today on the Predictable Revenue Podcast, I'm going to be chatting with an expert about how to sell better in an economic downturn. He is the award-winning co-author of Selling to Zebras and is the dynamic founder and CEO of Zebrify. The company developed Zebra software, which is a guided selling sales system that directs sellers and B2B buyers through a buying cycle. He has more than 30 years of experience in building businesses. Previously, as the COO at Bond USA Inc., he guided company-wide revenue to a tenfold increase in 5 years, leading to an IPO with a $12 billion market cap. And since Bond, he's assisted 14 companies in reaching merger and acquisition goals. So, Jeff Koser, welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm excited to be here. Always enjoy it.
I'm excited. Yeah, exactly. And it's actually welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast because we've had you on about a couple of years ago or 18 months ago now. So yeah, I'm excited to have you back.
Thank you.
So tell me about the sort of impending changes, or I guess the changes that are already starting to happen in the market, and what you kind of see the impact of those changes on selling in B2B.
I think everyone has felt the changes due to COVID, and then the follow-on from COVID, or the fallout from COVID, is supply chain disruption. That created some missed quarterly earnings announcements for some of the larger companies, which it's all starting to become almost like a snowball gathering momentum as it rolls down the hill. And now with inflation running as high as it has been, there's all this confluence of things happening, and then the attitude starts to shift. So Sequoia Capital was, I think, the first one. They came out to they're a large venture capital company out in California, if you're not familiar with them. But they went to all of their portfolio companies and basically said, whatever your plans are, make sure that your cash lasts twice as long as you had planned. So if you think you've got 18 months worth of cash, turn it into 36, because companies are going to slow down their decision-making process. Then Y Combinator came out and said something similar, and then Lightspeed Venture Partners. So it starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. When everybody says things are going to slow down, they start helping things slow down because their customers or their companies in their portfolio start slowing things down for all the companies like us that help them, for example, and that it just has this trickle-down effect. So it's going to happen even if we do recover. It's some of this is going to hit us.
Yeah. And where do you think it's kind of hitting the hardest in terms of the market overall, or what types of companies do you think are going to feel this most?
Well, startups are feeling it. There's no question, because they're going to be they're going to be asked to create a business case, and they're going to be asked why. So there's really, I think, three things that startups have to prepare for. And this is that 3-step plan that you and I were talking about earlier. One, they have to figure out really tightly who is their ideal customer profile and stay there, because those are the only companies where you can you can predict the value that you can create for them. And you're going to also have to be able to quantify it and get that messaging right so that people understand your positioning. That's the biggest problem that startups have is they don't necessarily know which box to put themselves into. And if they don't, in their positioning, make it easy for a prospect to figure out where they fit, that prospect is going to put them in the box that comes closest to it in their mind. And then they're going to be stuck in that box. And then the third point, and we can go into some detail on all three of these, but the third point is you're going to have to sell through your customers. So you're going to have the proof of value that you've created for others, and that comes from your customers.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's dive into that framework. So that first piece, just having that ICP absolutely dialed, walk me through that.
So as you know, in our book, Selling to Zebras, we talk about creating a zebra. And a zebra, in essence, really is a rock solid ICP, or ideal customer profile. And where we suggest companies take it just a little bit further is not just a yes or no decision or a targeting decision around your ICP, but you should turn it into something that allows you to measure it at the beginning, which tells you that you should or shouldn't engage, but also how to identify the varying buying constituencies, because everything is bought via a buyer's cycle or a buyer's journey today, right? Not via the sales cycle that we put together and we prescribe that we have our sales teams follow. Mm-hmm. The buyers take you on a buyer's journey, which means they become aware there's a problem. They go out and start to investigate it. And that's really the first time they'll even allow a salesperson to have a meeting. And then the third phase is where they actually make a decision. And in some cases, some buyers won't even let a salesperson get involved until they're actually in that decision mode. So they say that upwards of, I think the latest statistics are 80 to 90% of the deal is done before they'll even let a salesperson have a meeting, right? So that doesn't bode well for the salesperson or the company that shows up and expects to run a traditional sales cycle. So that ICP has to be so tight that you can actually measure not just how well you fit that prospect, but where you are on that buyer's journey and score that. So it can inform the next strategic step that you work on together. Ideally, it should be something that's logical from the buyer's perspective, not the seller's perspective. And the ICP should be able to inform you when you've earned the right to actually ask for the business. That sort of shifts the mindset of the salesperson too, because it ensures that they've covered the right bases, they've established the value in the eyes of the prospect, they've built a proposal that has everything that's needed in it to make sure that they can actually achieve that together with that prospect. And when you sell that way, you can actually get so good at it, Sarah, that you can close 90% of what ends up on your forecast when the score gets to that level where you've earned the right to ask for the business.
That's so interesting. How do you measure where you sort of slot into that buyer's journey if so much of that journey is happening sort of outside of your visibility?
So that's a really good question. So it depends on what they have done prior to allowing your salespeople to have a meeting. If their next move is an RFP, then you're going to have to work within the rules of the RFP. But what you can do even in that situation, if you bring 3 questions, for example, 3 really good, well thought out questions that are directly tied to value that are not in the RFP or requested functionality that isn't in the RFP, now you've earned the right to kind of go outside that RFP committee, if you will, identify who the executive is that originally decided that the organization should set up an RFP buying committee or an RFI buying committee, and have that meeting to suggest that maybe they should enhance that RFP a little bit so that they can get all the value that's possible. That's one way to sort of change it up and to determine if but just by doing that, just by challenging, sometimes you can figure out that maybe they really have already made that decision, like you were sort of alluding to, and maybe you're just cannon fodder. And in that case, if they're not going to allow you to change the rules, even if it would help them, then it might be one of those that you use your ICP to walk away from.
Got it. And what do you see as kind of the common mistakes that companies are making when it comes to their ICP, especially heading into a market downturn?
Another really good question. Most companies, when they put together their ideal customer profile, it's all about their product. We all have a product. We almost always fall in love with it, or at least we probably should. It should be that good. But the customer doesn't really care. What they care about is they have a business problem, and that's what they want to solve. So the ICP should focus on what is the pain that you solve? What is the problem that you solve? And what value, what measurable value, what things can you financially quantify, which if they were solved for that prospect, it would create value that brings in an economic downturn. By the way, the worst I saw during the last one was one company was requiring a 10x return in the first year before they were going to make a purchase. Now that was crazy, and that was sort of an outlier, but that gives you an idea of just how tough it can get, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, interesting. And what do you see as the negative impacts when companies aren't targeting the right ICP or aren't looking at this in the right way?
Well, especially if it's a significant opportunity, we tend to involve our leadership teams in those deals, right? So it isn't just sales management that a seller might get involved in the deal. We might have executive management, maybe even the C-suite involved. Maybe R&D, certainly possibly product marketing. So when you're not pursuing your ideal customer profile, you're wasting not just sales resource time and materials, and you're wasting literally the best minds in the company pursuing something that either you shouldn't or you're not going to win.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, there's that this is what we focused on in our last episode. So I'll make sure that we direct people there. If you want to spend a whole hour with us looking at the zebra or the ideal customer profile, that's what we chatted about on the last time we had Jeff on the podcast. So we'll link that for you guys if you want to step over there and dive more into the ICP. But on this episode, we're going to dive next into that getting the value message right. So tell me about that, Jeff.
So we say, Sarah, that it should be quantifiable, and what the difference between quantifiable and not quantifiable is if you, well, I'll give you an example. One of our customers has a product that allows large companies to track influencers. So they're in the influencer marketing space, which is one of the more powerful ways for companies to communicate in a credible way with prospects, because they've proven through their customer base that potential buyers believe content that maybe isn't quite as crisp or perfect as if something was done in the studio, for example, but it's the authentic use of the product by somebody they know and they trust. That's the very definition of an influencer. So influencer marketing is one of the most sought after fields, and influencers themselves are some of the most sought after individuals for having credible connections with your customers and or your future customers. But large companies have many programs that are run either by different brands within that company. Many of them are global, so they're regionally focused programs There's often overlapping programs that go across regions and across countries and maybe across genres. And this software allows you to manage all of that. And it allows you to determine which of these influencers actually has the audience that they claim they have, for example. So it tracks that. It allows them to see are the which influencers are trending up, and are they as they trend up, are people truly engaging with their content? So all those metrics matter, but they don't matter as much as, does it actually translate at the cash register? That's the holy grail for influencer marketing, as it is for most marketing, is, does it actually impact your ability to grow top line sales? And then if it does, by how much? So that's financially measurable. So the other things are good indicators of success, but you really want to get to, for example, one of their clients is Mattel, and Mattel prides themselves on knowing which marketing programs they run actually generate real revenue and by how much. And Mattel isolated the effect of influencer marketing and could tell you exactly how it translated into sales at the cash register. So that's the type of thing we're talking about. You have to be able to, especially in the economy we're heading into, you have to be able to build a business case around hard dollar savings, not soft dollar savings. And the other example from that same client is, can you do it with a smaller team if you use their software, for example? So that's the people productivity. And if you can save a whole headcount or two or three or more, then it's hard dollar savings. If it's just fractional, then it's soft. And a lot of companies in a tough economy won't make a positive decision to buy on just soft savings alone.
Yeah, that's a great point. How do you think this translates into the actual physical messaging? Like if you're going out and reaching out, say with cold outbound, or you're kind of having those early stage conversations, how do you bring up these things without it kind of coming across as that? I don't know. I think a lot of companies try to do this, and it can come across as quite gimmicky if it's that this percent ROI, that percent savings. Like how do you bring that across in a genuine way?
So you have to be crisp about the problem you solve. That's a hard one, because again, it doesn't involve your product. It's all about the customer. It's all about their pain, and you have to put yourself in a box that somebody can understand. There's a really good book by April Dunford called Absolutely Awesome, and she talks about that, how in fact, that what I just shared with you before about they will put you in a box. You want to get put in the box that you want to be put in. She talks about that. That's a concept, and the way she explained it is I stole that idea from her because I liked it. So for example, our software, we always used to say we're not CRM, but we actually have a lot of CRM-like qualities. And that actually confused the marketplace. So now what we say is that we are guided selling that happens to have a free CRM. And that started to resonate. And I only use that to share with you how, so now people can say, they're different than CRM, but similar enough to CRM. We already have a CRM, but maybe we should look at them. So that's what's helped us, is just that slight tweak in messaging can just make all the difference in the world.
Cool. Tell me about the last step of this 3-part cure to selling in a downturn.
Excuse me. So it's about lemon water. That's what it's about. It's about selling through your customers. And what I mean by that is, it's kind of going back to what we were just talking about with influencer marketing being the most productive and bang for the buck. That it's one of the best marketing that you can do today. Well, your customers are just that also. So what the customer says is the problem you solve for them. what the customer says is the reason that they originally decided that they should look for a solution like yours. And what they say is the reason that they continue to buy from you. That's what you should put out there in your messaging. It's quotes like that. And what they say is the amount of measurable bottom line value that you created for them is what you should use to predict predictable revenue, right? Predictable ROI. It's what you should use to predict what you can do for the next customer because you've already done it, and hopefully with a customer that's similar to them. So that's how you leverage those customers into potentially into vertical markets and into use case markets. And what we recommend is that you have at least 3 of each. So if you're pursuing healthcare, you should have 3, we call them voice of the customer case studies that are heavy on quotes, heavy on metrics, that allow you to make a claim around what you can do for healthcare. Because one is a fact, prospects will take notice if you have a someone that is a household name type of customer, so a large one that everybody recognizes, a solid brand. So one's a fact, 2 is a trend, so that now they see that you've been able to repeat it, but 3 is irrefutable. Now with 3 that say, yes, in healthcare, you can accomplish this, you can become this much more efficient and reduce headcount over here, for example, they may choose to feel like it might not still be possible for them, but they can't refute that the company has done it. And if you have that in each vertical, and if you have that for each use case, now you're arming your sales team for this type of economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you leverage that voice of the customer, those, little anecdotes and pieces of hard evidence? How do you leverage that through your messaging and through the different stages of the buyer's journey that you mentioned from the beginning here?
Yeah, another excellent question. So during the awareness stage, that's exactly what companies want to find, is proof that you've done it before, proof that others have solved the problem and how they've done it. So you lead with that type of information, the voice of the customer on your website. You lead with it in your marketing outreach. You lead with it with your inbound. So when inbound leads come in, you lead with what you've accomplished. When they're really just in the awareness stage, they don't want that salesperson calling on them. They're just looking for help. They're looking to be informed. They're looking to get to a place where they decide as a company that, yes, this is something we're going to pursue, and then we'll let you engage. So that's in the awareness stage. In the investigative stage, today, that's usually as soon as they'll let a salesperson in. So when that salesperson shows up, they should have consistent messaging that is aligned with what they've been able to find on their own. It should be that voice of the customer proof, but now it should be refined that much better for that prospect. You should bring proof that they're an ideal profile prospect for you, because everybody wants to know that you're who they target. They are the ones that you create the most value for. So we actually teach companies to score the ICP with the prospect to verify that you're right for them, they're right for you. That creates a collaboration between the two. And if it doesn't work out, you both walk away friends, but very little time is wasted, and you end up with a better reputation in the market, because companies start to realize that you'll only press them for a meeting if you can prove that you've got a good fit for them. And then the last phase of it is when you do finally get to the decision mode, you can provide them with a business case that's based on that voice of the customer proof that shows that not only have you done it before, but now you've linked it specifically to that prospect, and you've verified it together, and you've built a proposal that helps make sure that you can look them in the eye and say, look, I've got everything I need in this proposal to help make you successful.
Awesome. Well, let's do a little recap here of what we've covered. So changes are coming. Changes have already been happening in the market, and that is leading to startups, SaaS startups, B2B companies that, this audience and you and I are targeting. They're conserving their cash. They're trying to have a longer cash runway with the cash they already have, which means, number one, it's going to be tougher to get them to spend money. But number
Absolutely.
two, to get them to spend money, you're going to need to be able to define very clearly how you can help extend that cash runway or make an impact, whether that's adding cash or making significant savings. And so the three ways you can go about actually, presenting yourself well, making sure you're going after the right people, all that sort of thing, is nail the ICP, come back, revisit that, make sure that that is incredibly clear and accurate so that you can better forecast the closes, and so that you don't waste their time and your time, the precious resources that you've got on both sides. You need to get the value messaging right. And that goes back to, like we mentioned, the quantifiable, not the soft dollar savings, but the hard dollar savings. What impact are you going to create there? And then finally, sell through your customers. So make sure you get that social proof, make sure you get the voice of the customer so that you can leverage that throughout the buying journey. Did I miss anything?
I bet you were a good test taker.
Definitely a skill I acquired as an adult, I will say.
you didn't. I'll just add one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
Today's economy, as you know, is a SaaS economy, right? You can rent almost anything. You can buy almost anything as a service. And even with big ticket items, you can probably put in an order and in some cases even get that product tomorrow. But in the case with software as a service, for example, it should be frictionless also for that customer to try you, especially in a tough economy. So if you make it frictionless for them to buy or frictionless for them to trial you, that's important. And then as they do trial you or buy from you, you also have to make sure that client success is totally aligned so that they understand what problem that customer buy you to solve and what metrics are they expecting to achieve, so that everybody is focused on making sure that they realize that they're not done until those promises have been met.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great place to wrap it up on that piece of insight. Jeff, if people want to learn more from you, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they do that?
Jeff at Zebrafi, zebrafi.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us back on the Predictable Revenue Podcast. It was great to have you again.
Thanks for having me, Sarah. You're a great host and a great question asker.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for joining us on another episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast. Please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on YouTube so that you can be notified each week when we have wonderful guests joining us, like Jeff and other revenue, marketing, sales, all those leaders that are going to help us sell through that downturn. This and all those other podcasts that are going to really help you guys out. So yeah, thank you for joining us again. We'll catch you next time.